Hi guys, the Tory government's response to many problems is to throw the army at it. Now, while the military collaborates with and supports civilian authorities and traditional first responders in their efforts to respond to emergencies and disasters, they serve to strengthen and expand local disaster response capacity. But as emergency services of a country may have a robust plan to deal with the unexpected, sometimes disaster strikes that overwhelm their resources and manpower. This is the case during a pandemic, flood, or other natural disaster, but this current crisis is one manufactured by 12 years of Tory rule. With the military being drafted, trade unions have expressed concern. Have a listen.
Saying that untrained staff are actually more of a hindrance than a help, and that the specialist training that these NHS workers have built up over years, that will obviously be lacking, particularly in the case of ambulance workers when it comes to exceeding speed limits and getting through red lights. But clearly, without a resolution on pay, these strikes are going to go ahead. And health experts have been warning that this is a more difficult winter than any that the NHS has faced. That there are all these pressures coming together to create this situation where the health service is under serious pressure, partly because of the backlog, because of the pandemic, and we know that nurses' strikes will affect many operations and procedures being cancelled. But also, as far as ambulances are concerned, there's already a situation where patients are waiting much longer than they should when they get to hospital in those ambulances. The handover time to be passed into A&E is already far too long. So clearly, this disruption is the last thing that the NHS and patients need, but without a resolution on pay, these strikes are going to go ahead.
So the response from the Tories is always, as I said, to throw the military at it. Just to, okay, we'll use the army to fill the gap. But as I said at the beginning, this is okay during the pandemic. This is okay during a natural disaster. But this current crisis is manufactured. This is the result of 12 years of Tory rule, fighting with the doctors, fighting with nurses, fighting with the NHS, underfunding the NHS, creating problems where the NHS can't get access to the staff it needs, for example, Brexit. The way to fix this is, first of all, to sit down with the nurses, like what happened in Scotland. Negotiate with them on pay. Yes, the nurses are asking for 19%, and they're not expecting to get 19%. But they have to start high in order to negotiate down to something that's reasonable. But the Tories don't want to do that. They want to create a problem. They want to turn the public against the NHS staff and eventually against the NHS as well, because this is, of course, part of the plan to sell it off. It's not working. We need to sell it off. There isn't enough staff. We need to rely on the private sector. The ambulance service is not up to scratch. We need to provide alternatives. Now, what was raised here by the unions, of course, makes sense. If you bring in people who are untrained, and the soldiers are not trained as ambulance drivers, they're not trained as nurses. Most of them don't have that training. That's not their fault. They're trained to fight. They're trained to help in disaster relief. They're not trained to respond to emergencies, excuse me, like this. And of course, they're going to create problems themselves. But the Tories don't seem to care about that. It's all about what we can use in our fight against the trade unions and in our fight against the nurses. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think about all of this. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.